We are often taught an invisible line separates private faith from public lives, a barrier designed to keep religion entirely out of the civic square. But the Presidential Religious Liberty Commission recently released a report, administered by the Department of Justice, that challenges this entire structure. Their investigation highlights a striking fact. The famous phrase, the wall of separation, is absent from the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment specifically prohibits establishing an official state religion, but does not demand that personal faith be scrubbed from public view. Enforcing a concept missing from our founding documents created a cultural vacuum. It forces citizens to choose between sincere convictions and their standing in society. This vacuum is now filled by strict secular mandates, pushing average Americans out of the public square. The report cites numerous public school teachers and athletic coaches who face termination for something as simple as offering a private post-game prayer on the 50-yard line. In the military, decorated service members lost their health care and their pensions after they requested religious exemptions to vaccine mandates. Even elementary students have faced censorship and bullying for wearing religious clothing or choosing to pray quietly in a school cafeteria. When the state manages religion as a problem to be contained, it effectively dismantles the civic participation of millions of citizens. The founders specifically designed the First Amendment to prevent the state-mandated religious persecution they had witnessed throughout early colonial history. George Washington made this clear in a letter to the Truro Synagogue, assuring the Jewish community that their right to flourish publicly was an inherent natural right, not a mere indulgence from the government. This wasn't a matter of personal preference. The founders viewed religion as the indispensable support that builds the moral character required for a people to govern themselves. This moral framework provided the philosophical engine for the country's greatest corrections, most notably during the Civil Rights Movement, where leaders used religious principles to challenge the system of segregation. Today, those same convictions drive immense charitable contributions. Faith-based institutions provide 60% of the nation's homeless shelter beds and 20% of its hospital care. The Commission frames this freedom as the engine of the Republic's success, providing the internal moral structure that allows a diverse society to function. This founding vision was eventually challenged by European thinkers like Nietzsche, who argued that objective truth was dead and that moral codes were simply tools used to exercise power. As these ideas entered American academic and legal circles, scholars began prioritizing total individual autonomy over religious tradition, reframing faith as a potential threat to the state. This long-term intellectual shift reached the Supreme Court in 1947. Justice Hugo Black, a former Ku Klux Klan member, authored an opinion that broke with over 150 years of legal precedent. Black bypassed the actual text of the Constitution, reaching instead for a private letter written by Thomas Jefferson. He used Jefferson's wall metaphor to justify purging religious expression from the public sphere. This legal maneuver changed the status of religious exercise in the eyes of the law, treating a fundamental human right as a problem that required government containment. The Commission argues for a new paradigm, discarding the wall and replacing it with a bridge, acknowledging that church and state can strengthen one another without merging. To roll back decades of secular legal precedent, they have proposed a 12-point policy blueprint to restore religion's presence in American life. They recommend repealing the Johnson Amendment, which currently allows the government to regulate what religious leaders can say to their communities from the pulpit. The plan also calls for universal school choice, ensuring that parents can direct their children's education toward faith-based schools using taxpayer funds. Further mandates direct the Department of Justice to prioritize and track litigation, specifically defending citizens against religious liberty violations. These policies provide a coordinated roadmap to dismantle the mid-century secular consensus and rebuild the nation's institutions. Why did the founders view religious freedom as the single most critical right to protect? They understood that a state becomes all-powerful only when it removes any competing source of authority. Totalitarian regimes cannot tolerate citizens who answer to a power higher than the government. Protecting religious exercise creates a sector of society the state does not own. It acts as a structural defense against government overreach, ensuring citizens are never solely subjects of the bureaucracy. For America to remain a light of freedom, it must protect its first freedom, remaining one nation under God.